This has got to be one of the most important video clips I've shown you since October 7th and the war began. I produce a lot of videos on JTV, react to all kinds of video clips. This video here, and I would say in some ways, is one of, if not the most important to date. This is Mika Avni. He's an Israeli Jew. He grew up in an American Jewish household, which was liberal, progressive. They taught, and their whole ethos was about looking out for the other, two-state solution, finding ways to have peace with the Palestinians, with the Arabs. That's what he was raised on. And he is saying now, and he's posted this just after we saw the coffins of the Bibas children paraded by Hamas. He is saying some very hard, difficult truths about the conflict that we need to realize in him as someone that grew up in a progressive household. But it gets far, far more personal than that, and you'll see him explain this in his story. His father was murdered by a terrorist 9 years ago, and that terrorist was released, about to be released, in the ceasefire deal of hostages for criminals, for terrorists being exchanged. What he is saying about what needs to be done, where he says relocation of the Arabs is the only solution now. He is saying, and also lamenting the fact that we're doing these deals where we're releasing terrorists. This is not coming from me. This is coming from someone that grew up and lived and breathed liberalism and progressivism. I'm not going to say any more. I just want you to watch his words, because what he says reflects the way a lot of people have been feeling. A lot of Israelis and Jews waking up to the fact that as much as we've tried to have peace and make peace for 100 years, the other side have shown us what they really are. Have a watch.
I'm going to say out loud what every Israeli is thinking today. We need to take all of the Arabs from Gaza and all of the Arabs from Judea and Samaria and move them far, far away from here. Now, I grew up in a liberal American household. We listened to Free to Be You and Me. My parents marched with Martin Luther King Jr. My father was an elementary school principal. He dedicated his life to teaching children how to get along and how to be better people. This was his dream. 9 years ago, my father was riding home on a bus in Jerusalem when two Hamas terrorists boarded the bus, shot him in the head, stabbed him in the face, in the chest, in the stomach. As I record this video, the terrorist who brutally murdered my father is about to be released. I've seen a lot of terror in my life. I lost one of my closest friends to Al-Qaeda. My officer was killed by Hezbollah. I've seen buses blow up. I've seen missiles explode next to me. I've seen a person with a knife sticking out of their head. I know what terror is. Many Israelis know what terror is. And on October 7th, we all learned it. We all saw it. Every Israeli, every Jew. We saw babies burned alive, women raped, families murdered one in front of another. And we understood what we're dealing with. We all understand it now. I looked at the Bibas babies in the past 2 days. Listen to that. The terrorists tore them apart with their bare hands and smashed them up to bits and pieces with rocks. Yesterday, we were miraculously saved from what would have been the largest terror attack ever. Almost 200 people blown up in buses in Tel Aviv if it weren't for an accident on the terrorist part. Now, we spent 40 years trying to talk, trying to discuss things with them, trying to coexist, trying to negotiate. We spent 40 years. They threw rocks at us. We didn't throw rocks back. They threw Molotov cocktails at us. We didn't throw Molotov cocktails back. They shot at us. They threw mortars at us, and we reacted proportionately, stopped, and went back to the negotiating table.
And by the way, before he continues, just quickly, he says we spent 40s. We've actually spent 100 years. We've been agreeing to land deals since the 1930s, where Israel would have a tiny part and the Arabs would have a massive part. And the great displacement that they say, well, you kicked us out and then you wanted to make peace. That's not fair. We didn't kick them out. There were Jews there. There were Arabs living there in the late 1940s. And the UN said, well, there's been a Jewish state here before thousands of years ago. They've maintained a connection to this land way before Islam existed and the Arabs have been here. Yes, the Arabs have migrated here over the centuries since the Islamic conquest. And fine, there's now Arabs living here and Jews living here. Before anyone was pushed out and forced out, They said, okay, so let's divide the land into two. We'll have an Arab state and a Jewish state. The Jews said yes, the Arabs rejected, went to war against them, and many Arabs got displaced in the war to annihilate the Jews. And now that's our fault? And ever since then, we've been trying to make peace, despite their genocidal aims.
Our arms have always been open to peace. They've always been open to coexistence. But there is nobody to talk to. We are surrounded by millions of Arabs, almost every single one of us who want to see us dead.
Name one Palestinian leader since the conflict began that hasn't said that view, hasn't had that view, that's really sought peace. There isn't any.
Did you hear even one person in Gaza trying to help out the hostages, trying to save? Was a righteous person trying to save a hostage? Not even one. You know, there is a kindergarten named after the terrorist who murdered my father. There is an elementary school named after the terrorist who murdered my father. There is a Boy Scout leadership program named after the terrorist who murdered my father. There are book clubs named after the terrorist who murdered my father. It's a culture of hatred and death.
And I mean, that's just so unbelievably painful. Can you imagine? This guy is just incredible. But also think about the fact that in Nazi Europe, there are people that resisted. There were heroes. There are people that helped the Jews, hid the Jews, saved them. We're not hearing any examples here.
It's a crazy religious ideology that wants to see every single one of us Jews here in Israel thrown into the sea, killed, whether it be brutally murdered with a bomb or a knife or whatever. That is what they want to do. It is their end goal. So there's no one to talk to. And we've tried. The only solution is to take all of the Arabs from Gaza, all of the Arabs from Judea and Samaria, and move them far, far away from here. And it's quite simple. You take the Arabs from Gaza through Egypt into Libya. There's plenty of space there. It's far, far away from here. And the Gulf states in the Western world can happily help them rehabilitate and build there, and they'll have better lives. And you can take the Arabs from Judea and Samaria and move them through Jordan into Iraq and do the same thing. The Gulf states can help them. Europe can help them out, and they can rebuild. And we'll be far away from each other. And we deserve to live in peace here in Israel. You know, my kids don't sleep at night. Sometimes they pee in their bed because of the fear of terror attacks. I can't sit in a coffee shop without looking in every direction, wondering if somebody's going to walk in with a bomb and blow me up. You can't walk quietly in the street. Israelis are living in fear and have been for the past year and a half, and it has to stop. And that is the only solution, is to move the Arabs far away from here. So there, I've said it. I've said out loud what every Israeli is thinking today.
Wow. Wow. There's a lot to say here and unpack here. But the key thing that I want to get across to you that is so powerful is that this is someone that comes from a liberal, progressive background that has tried for so long and is realizing the unavoidable truth. You know, I saw someone the other day on Twitter, pro-Israel advocate, saying, what could we do other than two-state solution or occupation where people have different rights and it's just going to create, you know, international outrage forever and ever? Tell me another option, they said. And it seemed like the idea of moving the Arabs was unconscionable to them, that they couldn't even think it. Well, I'm sorry. Why is it unconscionable? Oh, well, it's ethnic cleansing? No, they are trying to have ethnic cleansing of the Jews from their ancient homeland. They want ethnic cleansing. They want to throw us into the sea. And as a result of this, we have to say, well, we can't tolerate this anymore, to have a whole culture and society that supports that. Oh, what about the people that don't support that? Number one, where are they? I'm not hearing them. Number two, I'm sure they are there. I'm sure many people, even if they have hopeful views, they could be shifted. But when your society at large supports, votes for, publicly shows a certain viewpoint, that's going to be the reality. You know, did we say in World War II, oh, well, I'm sure there are people in Nazi Germany that don't support the Germans. So we say, oh, well, okay, I guess what can we do then? No, sometimes you have to make very hard choices because the majority of a culture, not everyone, but the majority of a culture makes certain choices. Sorry, that's the way it works. Because there's a small minority that we haven't even heard of that might maybe want peace with us, we therefore have to suicide our country? Sorry. As he was saying in that video, it's unacceptable that Israelis, Jews, should have to live in fear and trepidation every day. If we want to be truly sovereign, that means taking the hard, difficult choices to protect your people. That means saying we don't negotiate with terrorists. That's a hard choice. Because if you negotiate, you tell them it pays to do terror. It means we say we're done with trying to negotiate with you and give you land for peace, which only leads to more terror. We're not showing weakness anymore. The only language you seem to respect is one of strength, uncompromising strength. And by the way, thank God that so many people are coming to this realization now, rather than before would be too late. Like, for example, agreeing to a Palestinian state, which means a Gaza much, much bigger in the hills of Judea and Samaria, looking onto mainland Israel, central Israel. God only knows what would happen there had we done that. Thank God Hamas are showing us who they are now. So we realize that the whole cause of Palestinian statehood is not about genuine desire just for statehood and self-determination and human rights. No, it's nothing to do with that. They don't care about that. They don't see themselves as a distinct people. They see themselves as part of the Arab Islamic world that simply wants Islamist expansionism and sees the return of the Jewish people to Israel as a major threat to their whole theological worldview. And it is a major threat because it shows the God of Israel did not reject the Jews. And that's something they're going to have to process the same way the Christian world processed that. At least in the evangelical and many parts of the American Christian community, where they've now had a whole theological shift. Realizing that God never forsook the Jewish people, and they take inspiration from God maintaining his covenant with them and returning them to the land. That's why it's so threatening Israel to them. That's why they can't bear Israel. It's nothing to do with political issues and land. It's to do with, what does this say about their own religion? That's why October 7th was so exciting for them, because they thought maybe this is going to be the collapse of Israel and vindication of Islam. Well, a lot can happen in a year. You know, they talk about the whole issue of moving, it's unacceptable. Well, the President of the United States now supports this idea. And when people say, oh, well, you know, they move them to other countries, they could still be a problem from other countries. Well, it's not the same. If you're a minority in another country, you don't have the levers of power like they do, let's say, in Gaza, where they run the government. And the other thing is, when you're inside of Israel, they feel like they bear the weight of the Arab-Islamic war against the Jews. So they have to be radicalized, they have to fight, they have to go all out. Whereas if they're living in other parts of the Arab world, they're not going to feel that same sense of, we have to fight the Jews in the same way. It's just going to be very different. So it's an obvious strategic move. I don't know about you, but more and more people are waking up to this unavoidable reality now. This is Mark Dubowitz. He's the CEO of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He just posted on Twitter, and we made a graphic about this. You can find this on JTV, Instagram, and Twitter, and Facebook. He said, I deeply regret my decades of support for a Palestinian state under land for peace and the two-state solution. I was wrong, badly wrong. I misjudged a society that prioritizes murdering Jewish children over building a better future for its own. I apologize. The Western mindset simply can't imagine that people could be so evil. That's what led to the appeasement of Adolf Hitler. No, he can't be that mad. He can't be that deranged about his Jew hatred. He just maybe wants a little bit more land, and that's what it's all about. Let's just appease, accept that he wants to take a little chunk of Czechoslovakia and, you know, etc., etc. It's to fundamentally misunderstand the human psyche to think that we just need self-determination, human rights, and basic needs met, then we're fine. No. There are other deep human needs that need to be met. Feeling a sense of meaning, sense of belonging to a purpose, serving a higher cause. And that's what drags people to extremism. And that's what progressive mindset doesn't seem to understand. They think, no, if we just keep giving a bit more, then it will create peace. And of course, that is to fundamentally misunderstand the whole Arab cause. We learned this through Gaza. We gave away Gaza. It was a mini two-state solution. Great gesture for peace. And rather than choosing to build up, they chose to dig down, to build tunnels, literally, terror tunnels, to choose hatred, choose death over life. But more and more people are waking up to this now. But the key thing is, you can have this clarity and then you can lose it. You know, everyone was so shocked to see what Hamas did with the Bibas family. Why are they shocked? We know that Hamas are this evil from October 7th. The concern is, do we once again lose this clarity and go back to our old ways? God forbid we should do that. That's why we need to get this message out there. Share this video, share this important clip from Mika Avni far and wide. We need to have this clarity. It really is a matter of life and death.
Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.